Welcome to the listening room. My parents tried to force me and my sister into marriage. The attic had always been locked, not because anyone talked about it. It was simply one of those unspoken rules in the house. The door stayed locked, always. Then their parents left town for the weekend. Late Saturday afternoon, 14-year-old Emma walked down the hallway and noticed something impossible. The attic door wasn't locked, it was cracked open. She hesitated. Curiosity won. She climbed the stairs. She expected boxes and old furniture. Instead, she found a finished room, a couch, a desk, a rug, shelves lined with carefully labeled photo albums, storage bins stacked neatly against the walls. Everything looked as though someone had been there recently. She pulled down the first album, a family she didn't recognize. The second, Christmas morning, the same family. The third stopped her cold. Her father, wearing a tuxedo, standing beside another bride. She turned the page. Her own mother stood beside them, smiling for the camera, another page. The three of them laughing together. Emma's hands began to shake. She kept looking. There were school portraits of two young children. One read, "To Aunt Emily, love, Lily." Another said, "Love you, Aunt Emily, Mason." Then she found a file folder. Inside were certified divorce papers, the date. 7 years ago, she did the math. She and her twin had been 8 years old. Quietly, she gathered the wedding album, the divorce papers, and the children's school pictures. Then she went downstairs. Her twin, Andre, was sitting in the living room playing a video game. Without saying a word, she laid the wedding album in front of him. He looked at the cover. Whose wedding? She opened it. He stared at the first photograph. That's Dad. She turned another page, and that's Mom. Another page. Standing next to the bride. Neither of them spoke. She slid the divorce papers across the coffee table. He read the date twice. We were 8. For the rest of the weekend, they went back to the attic together, determined to figure out what had really happened. The garage door opened. Mom and Dad came inside carrying overnight bags. The house was quiet, too quiet. Dad smiled. "Where are the monsters?" No answer. They walked into the dining room. The twins were sitting at the table. Neither looked angry, neither looked upset. The table was covered with photographs, the wedding album, the divorce decree, the children's school pictures, Christmas cards addressed to Aunt Emily. Dad stopped walking. Mom's eyes immediately found the wedding album. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew. She looked at her husband. Their daughter broke the silence. She slid the divorce papers across the table. "You're not married?" Her father looked at the papers, then at her mother. Neither answered. The son picked up the school pictures. "And we have a brother and a sister." Silence. He looked at his father. His voice cracked. "We've been asking for a little brother or sister since we were 5." He held up the picture. We already had them. Their daughter stared at both of her parents. "I don't get it. You love each other. You've always loved each other. So, why did you get divorced?" Silence. The son looked down at the school pictures again. "Do they know about us?" Their father looked at their mother before answering. "Some." The twins looked at each other. "They know you're your mother's twins." He paused. "They don't know. I'm your father." "Silence," their daughter whispered. "Why?" Their father took a slow breath. "Because children your brothers and sisters age." He paused. Little children talk. One conversation at school, one innocent comment to the wrong person, and everything we were trying to protect would have been gone. The son quietly repeated, "We've been asking for a little brother and sister since we were 5." Silence. Their daughter looked at her parents. "We're 14. We're not little kids anymore. Why is it still a secret?" Emily looked at Michael. He gave the slightest nod. She closed the wedding album and gathered the divorce papers and school pictures into a neat stack. This isn't a conversation for the dining room table. Come with us." Without another word, she walked into the living room. Michael followed. The twins hesitated for only a moment before following. Emily placed everything on the coffee table. Michael sat in his usual chair. Emily took one end of the couch. The twins sat together across from them. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Emily began. "My great grandparents started our company at a time when Black people didn't have many opportunities. Everything we have was won. Every building they bought, every dollar they earned, they fought for it. We weren't handed a legacy, we built one. Our family has always believed in Black excellence. Black excellence isn't something you're given, it's something you build. Then protect for the people who come after you." My great grandparents' company wasn't just a business, it became the foundation of our family. The homes, the scholarships, the jobs, the security, generation after generation, it all came from what my great grandparents started and what my grandfather expanded, creating opportunities for every branch of our family. Many of our relatives still work for the company today. Just like my grandfather and my father, your aunt and I graduated from Howard, came home, and went to work for the company. Every generation learned what it needed to strengthen what the generations before them had built. Her expression grew more serious until my father, he went to Howard. He came home and joined the company, and that was the end of his contribution. He stopped building. He believed the legacy belonged to him simply because he was born into it. Grandpa believed every generation had a responsibility to leave the family better than they found it. My father believed he was entitled to what everyone else had built. That's the difference between a steward and an heir. A steward protects the legacy, an heir only sees the inheritance. Grandpa saw that long before anyone else did. He realized his son didn't share the vision, the responsibility, or the integrity required to carry the legacy forward. The company serves the whole family. It isn't one man's kingdom, even if it sometimes looks that way. One day, one of you or both of you will take over after Sarah and me. But that isn't what your grandparents started planning all those years ago. Emily looked at the twins. That was the plan. It should have remained the plan. But the pregnancy changed everything. Your grandparents saw an opportunity. From that moment on, they stopped thinking like parents. They started thinking like people trying to control a legacy. Your grandparents were smart. They started small. They grounded Sarah so she couldn't see Derek. Suddenly, there were family plans. They took away her phone, then her computer, so she had to use the one in the den. They even shut down the router. They said it was because she was pregnant and couldn't be trusted. It wasn't. They were separating her from Derek, one day at a time. They wanted everyone to believe they were just concerned. Then one night, Sarah came downstairs. She heard voices coming from Dad's office. Our parents weren't alone. They were meeting with one of Dad's oldest friends. Sarah recognized his voice. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but then she heard our names. They were planning our futures. They talked about getting her away from Derek. They talked about marriages. They weren't worried about Derek. They believed they could control him. Both daughters, one of them said. They already had someone else in mind. As long as one of us married into the family they had chosen, it would be perfect. Later, when the house was quiet, Sarah started searching. At first, she didn't know what she was looking for. Then she found notarized marriage license applications with both of our names. There were even parental consent forms for Sarah. Our signatures had been forged. One packet named Derek with Sarah, another named Dad's friend's son with Sarah, a third paired his son with me. They were preparing for every contingency. They would have the most control if one of us married Dad's friend's son, but it was the trust documents that explained everything. Sarah photographed every page. Then she put everything back exactly where she'd found it. They never knew she'd seen any of it, at least. They didn't know that yet. They kept tightening their grip. They watched everything. They controlled where Sarah went, who she talked to, how she spent every minute they could control. They thought they'd separated Sarah from Derek. They hadn't. Your aunt and uncle found ways to talk. Sarah knew she had to get away. She also had to get the thumb drive out of that house. Every day she kept it. Mm, was another day it could be discovered. Your grandparents went through her things. They monitored her calls. They took her everywhere. Suddenly, there were constant family plans. One of them was always with her. Derek would tell her he'd called or stopped by. She was never home, and when she was, they were just about to leave or already walking out the door, but they still talked in civics, in public speaking, in the halls, at lunch. They still saw each other at church. And whenever they happened to cross paths while she was out with our parents, but she still couldn't get him the thumb drive. So she created an opportunity. She intentionally fell behind on the research portion of her public speaking class. She chose a topic that required the Minneapolis Central Library. The school contacted your grandparents. They realized that between the limited internet and the constant family schedule, Sarah hadn't had time to finish the assignment. She was falling behind. It didn't help that the research required the actual library, and if she didn't finish, she would fail the class. Your grandmother drove Sarah to the library. She dropped her off and said she'd be back in 3 hours. Derek was already there. Sarah handed him the thumb drive and a letter for me with instructions to mail it right away. Then she went to work and finished the research. Your grandparents believed the trip had been exactly what it appeared to be. They never suspected anything else had happened. Then something happened they never saw coming. A few days later, your grandparents took Sarah out to dinner. They had no idea Derek's family would be there too. Both families were waiting for their tables. Derek's father walked over to say hello and apologize. He said he'd been trying to reach your grandparents. He wanted to talk about the public speaking project. There were 6 students. The parents were rotating houses. That way, one family wouldn't have to host every afternoon. He explained that he was preparing for a major court case. He wasn't sure which afternoons he could supervise, so he was trying to coordinate the schedule. Your grandparents looked at each other. They asked him to repeat himself. Public speaking? Sarah's public speaking class? Derek's father smiled. Yes, Sarah and Derek are in the same group. That's when your grandparents realized Sarah and Derek had been in the same class all along. They thought the difference in grade levels had kept them apart. Before the weekend was over, they'd made another decision. That night, my father called. I assumed he was just checking in. He wasn't. He told me Sarah was pregnant. He said They just found out. He said she was having a difficult time. They wanted to get her away from Minnesota, away from her boyfriend. He asked if Sierra could stay with me for the summer, just until we figure things out. Of course. I said yes. I didn't know they were trying to separate her from Derek. I didn't know they were trying to control what happened next. They told me her flight was leaving the next morning. They asked if I could meet her at Reagan National Airport. Mother packed Sarah's suitcases. They told Sarah she was leaving in the morning. There wasn't any discussion. There wasn't any choice. By sunrise, she was on a plane. I'll never forget seeing her walk off that plane. I hugged my little sister. Then all of us hugged. We looked like fools, jumping up and down, squealing. We grabbed all of her luggage. It barely fit in the car. The moment we got inside, Sarah looked at me. I'm pregnant. I nodded. I know. Father told me. She shook her head. That's not the problem we have. Sarah stared out the window. Mother and father didn't send me here because I'm pregnant. They've been trying to keep me and Derek apart for weeks. They want one of us to marry John's son, Anthony. I looked at her. What? They forged documents, marriage paperwork, parental consent forms. Grandpa had a trust. A trust? She nodded. They've been planning our lives. I just stared ahead. Oh my God. I copied everything. I got Derek to mail it to you. Then she suddenly sat up. Oh my God. What? Derek. He doesn't know I'm gone. I handed her my phone without another word. Minnesota, while we were driving to Hyattsville. Derek was calling Mother. He wanted to know if he could come over so they could start their part of the public speaking project. In the background, his father called out, ask them if they've decided which day works best for hosting. Then Derek added, oh, and Dad wanted me to ask which afternoon you'd like to host. Mother put him off. She said they were just heading out. And that's exactly what he believed. His phone rang. It was Sarah. She told him she was in Maryland, that she was with me, and what Mother and Father had planned. When they hung up, Derek turned to his parents. Sarah's in Maryland. She's with Emily. We're having a baby. Silence. We're getting married sooner than we planned. Then Grandpa Derek asked him one question. What's your plan? Derek didn't hesitate. I'm finishing the project. I'm graduating. I'm getting that A. The day we present, I'm moving to Maryland. Your Aunt Sarah got her A too. She's always been the queen of research and presentations. She coordinated the entire project from Maryland. She emailed the research packets to the group, built the presentation, then recorded her part from Howard, Founders Library, the yard, even sitting on a bench. Her classmates got to see Howard long before they ever stepped foot on campus. Between her research and Howard's library resources, their group earned the highest grade in the class. Sarah was never the kind of person who could leave a question unanswered. If she didn't understand something, she researched it. Every morning we'd head to Howard. I'd go to class. Sarah disappeared into the law library. It started with Grandpa's trust, but it didn't stay there. Pretty soon she was researching trusts, marriage, legitimate children, divorce, guardianships, parental rights, emancipation, notaries, document fraud. Every answer created three more questions. She loved it. She'd call Grandpa Derek. He taught her how lawyers think. What's the statute say? Did you read the exception? Who benefits from that clause? Now find the case that explains it. When the questions became specific to Maryland, he referred us to attorneys there. Grandpa Derek taught her how to think like a lawyer. Before long, your Aunt Sarah wasn't just looking for answers. She was figuring out how to protect all of us. Tuesday came fast. By 4 that morning, Derek and his sister were pulling out of Minnesota. The car was packed with clothes, books, a few things from home, and enough snacks to get them through the first part of the drive. They planned to drive straight through, only stopping for gas, food, and to switch drivers. 24 hours later, they pulled into Maryland. It was good to finally have him there. Every day, Sarah buried herself in research. It started with your great grandfather's trust, but it quickly became much bigger than that. Piece by piece, the trust started making sense. So did the business, and so did my parents. They weren't just trying to control us, they were trying to gain control of everything. Once Sarah understood that, everything changed. A week later, Derek's parents arrived. So did his little sister. They'd driven all the way from Minnesota. It was wonderful finally meeting them. Derek's mom hugged Sarah, then she hugged me. His little sister looked around the apartment and decided almost immediately. She liked us. It didn't take long before it felt like family. That evening, Grandpa Derek asked everyone to sit down. He looked at me. Emily, what Sarah discovered changes everything. Your parents don't know it yet. When they find out, they're going to move quickly. You can't give them that opportunity. You need to marry fast. The room fell silent. Michael didn't say a word. He simply nodded. Then he stood, picked up his keys, and walked out the front door. No one followed him. No one asked where he was going. They already knew. A little while later, he came back. His car was packed. He carried box after box into the apartment. He walked straight into my bedroom. He unpacked his clothes, his books, his computer, everything. He never said a word. He simply moved in. A few days later, Sarah married Derek. Michael and I were married. It wasn't about a big ceremony. It was about protecting our future. After the weddings, all of us went to dinner. Derek, Sarah, Derek's parents, his little sister, Michael, and me. We laughed, we celebrated. Derek's family stayed the rest of the week. Then they drove back to Minnesota. My parents were already making plans. They came to Maryland to get Sarah. They still believed they'd kept the two apart. They were wrong. Michael answered their knock and let them in. And the first thing they saw, birthday balloons. Happy birthday. You're 18. Your dad told us later. My father frowned at the banner. My mother ignored it. My father said they were there for a family conversation. Your dad came to get us. Then he disappeared. My parents sat down, and my father didn't waste any time. We've decided how this is going to work. Sarah, you may marry Derek, but only if Emily marries Anthony. Otherwise, Sarah will marry Anthony. Before either of us could answer, the front door opened. Derek walked in from his run. He walked over to Sarah and kissed her on the cheek. I can still see the look on my parents' faces. I guess they didn't keep them apart. My father acted as though he was not in the room. He looked at us. Do you understand? Those are your choices. Sarah looked at him, then smiled. That's not possible. I'm already married. Silence. My mother spoke first. No, you're not. We never gave our permission. Sarah answered calmly. This is Maryland. Maryland law doesn't require parental consent. They had no idea. They'd never bothered to learn the law. They simply assumed they were in control. My father leaned forward. Fine. Then Emily will marry Anthony, or you're both on your own. We'll see how long your little marriages last without our money. They didn't know your dad was standing in the doorway. He walked over to me, slipped his arm around my waist. She can't get married. She already is. My father kept trying. He demanded we get annulments. He said he wouldn't continue paying for the apartment or school. Of course, we said no. We didn't bother telling him. We already knew about the trust. There was no point. Derek simply walked to the front door. He opened it and waited for them to leave. We stayed in Maryland until your dad and I finished college. Then we moved back to Minnesota, and then we had you. Then your dad met Charlotte, and he fell in love. It was our research queen who discovered the trust, never said, we had to remain married. It said we had to get married and stay together. That part wasn't hard. We've always stayed together. We've always been friends. But if we didn't stay together, my parents could eventually take control of the legacy we're all part of. They could do it through you, unless you were 18 or in college. You have to have the full benefit of two parents. Your brother and sister deserve that same protection. My parents would never stop at you. They never stopped trying to gain the authority that comes with controlling the company. After you were born, they took us to court. They claimed we weren't really married. They claimed we married for money. Then they claimed we only had you for money and power. What they never understood was that we do love each other. We wanted you. None of that was a lie. It was a promise. A promise we made just before your great grandfather died. Your dad, falling in love. That was easy to navigate. My situation isn't, so we couldn't tell you before. And we still have to figure out what comes next because you're not just going to have two younger siblings, you're going to have three. Emma blinked. Wait, you're pregnant? Emily smiled. Emily smiled, and that's where our story changes. It doesn't end here in many ways. It's only just beginning. So if you want to know what happens next, watch for the whole story. Watch for the novels in the Legacy saga.